So getting the house ready to go to DC was an incredibly intense experience. Because, for a multitude of reasons, we didn't get building as soon as we had originally planned, of course. But even after we got the house moved over to St. Paul, where we were supposed to be doing our verification testing, really fine-tuning all the details of the house and, painting the trim, this is what we were supposed to be doing, those kinds of finishing details. We were nowhere close. We still had a lot of work to do.
During the last 6 weeks of the project, we had a lot of things that were challenging at that time. Our schedule was obviously very delayed. We were still waiting on materials to be shipped in some areas. There just seemed to be many more things than hours in the day that we could spend to complete it.
Yeah, there was a lot that had to get done, a lot that still didn't get done, but we made it work. And just with a month left, you just kind of realize that the scope is almost infinite, and your time frame is tiny.
The time the project was moved to St. Paul was a time of, shall we say, high anxiety. All of the systems that we had considered in the design stage were now suddenly going to be tested, including our foundation system, which we had a lot of confidence on, but had never assembled it before. Whether all of the concepts that we had developed on paper for deconstructing the house in pieces was actually going to go together as planned. And so there was a lot of excitement and anxiety about that whole process, but actually we found that came together fairly well. It actually sort of met our expectations. But the problem is the house wasn't finished. We had the basic modules done, but there was a lot of work to be done, including most of the interior finishing, all of the exterior siding, for the most part all of the exterior siding, all of the systems, the deck, all of that had to be finished. And there was very little time left to do that.
It was really clear to me once we were actually building the house in St. Paul, and only 2 weeks or so before we had to actually be in Washington, that we could really fail. We really could fail. It was the night we were having an open house, and the deans had given me a thank you card that was just very heartfelt and really appreciated. And I was standing in the kitchen and suddenly really literally couldn't breathe, thinking, oh my God, we could fail. We could not finish this house. And really honestly, for just a brief moment, I let myself feel that, and then I cut it off because it was just not an option. I mean, we had to succeed. And success was different for everybody. For me, it was competing. So, whether the house won one single contest or did well here, there, whatever, competing to me was succeeding. So that was my goal, and I didn't let myself think of any other option, except for that one little minute.
Yeah, the last few weeks of the project, the last month and a half or so, was very intense. I think what was going through my mind during that time was I had been listening to This American Life with my husband Joe, who also works on the project, and they did a special on the anatomy of a fiasco. And so they talked a lot about 4 stories that exemplified all the wrong things happening at the end, but with all the biggest ambitions to do well. And it really reminded me of our project. Had this giant looming goal for DC. We knew the deadline could not be moved. And it was a very intense time, and I kept thinking about the potential for the project to either be really great, us succeeding all our ambitious goals, getting the house done in DC, doing well in the contests, or the alternate path of a giant fiasco where there's half a house on the mall, things falling off, no competition, us embarrassing ourselves. So on top of all the work, there was a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety on my part.
Because there was a point where you realize that it's not going to be the ideal finished product that we were hoping and kind of planning on. Not that it was very far from that, but just to in your mind really let go from the ideal was kind of made you mad because you wanted it to be as good as possible. But I mean, you could call that motivation too. So, yeah, there's a point when everything was pretty daunting.
It's a ridiculous competition. You know, like the whole concept, you know, you're building this house that you then ship to Washington, D.C. and put up for 10 days of competition. It's insane. And you know, all the things that I think about when I think about like the pros and cons, or you know, the highs and the lows of the competition, are that it's this kind of traumatic experience, like a plane crash or something, that you know, that you survive with this group of people, because while you're faced with this huge adversity, you need to come up with instantaneous, intelligent ways of solving problems with this group of people. And that inherently brings you together, because you learn to rely on each other for certain talents or for input, you know, like how are we gonna do this? And so, I mean, I made some lasting friendships from the project, you know, like these are great people, you know. But, you know, that wouldn't have happened without the obstacles that we had to overcome.